What up, no? It is another Thursday. This is Knockouts and Three Counts, and we do have a hell of an episode on tap for you tonight. We've got the return of Zoe Nowicki. We'll talk about the World Combat Games. We'll talk about signing with an Invicta FC, her fight that she's got coming June 28th, and all kinds of other stuff. But before we get to that, I got to tell you about our homies at Potter's Tree Service. If you need anything in the tree removal game or any of that kind of stuff, Potter's Tree Service is the way to go. If you're in the need for tree removal, tree trimming, chipping service, storm damage cleanup, lot clearing, all those things you see on the screen, Asa Potter and Potter's Tree Service are the way to go. All the links to their stuff are in the description. Make sure you check them out. Tell them Knockouts and Three Counts sent you, and enjoy the show.
This is the Ring of Honor, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy.
This is Mr. Anderson.
This is good old JR Jim Rock, and you are listening.
You're listening to Knockouts and Three Counts.
Cover! We got a new world champion!
That might be one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Knockouts and Three Counts is the podcast, baby! It's the real deal, baby!
Knockouts and Three Counts starts now.
And just like that, we're back with another episode of Knockouts and Three Counts. Like I said, we've got the return of our friend Zoe Nowicki before she makes her pro debut for Invicta FC. First of all, how the hell are you doing since the last time you've been on the show?
I'm doing really well. I think we talked before the World Combat Games in October. But I'm doing good. I've had a lot happen in the past, it's been over 6 months now, so it's crazy. It's crazy what can happen, but doing really well. I'm really enjoying this fight camp coming up for my pro debut and the Pan Ams right afterwards. So, yeah.
So tell me about that. First of all, before we get to the pro debut, before we get to all that, you got to tell me about the World Combat Games. You went over to Saudi. Talk to me, first of all, before we even get to any of the fighting or any of that good stuff. How was Saudi Arabia?
Actually, the World Combat Games were a really short amount of time. So I got my ticket like 4 days before we were supposed to leave, and all that stuff was happening in the Middle East. So like up until that time, we were like,
"Oh yeah,
are we going?" Like it was really weird, and it was the Saudi Olympic Committee like trying to get it all together, and so it made it kind of like hard. So we were only there for 48 hours. So we got there, weighed in, like we got there late, and then weighed in the next morning, competed, and left like that night. So it was a lot. I didn't really get to experience that much of Saudi, but it was still cool to like ride around the bus and like see a little bit of the culture, and it was completely different, So yeah, what the World Combat Games led me into was the Gamma World Championships, which was amazing. But the Combat Games, it was a good experience. I was glad I got that international exposure and, the flight there and learning how to do international competition. So.
Well, that sucks. You don't even get to check the place out or nothing, but obviously it looked like things went well over there. And I mean, like you said, you're getting international competition experience. I mean, it's only going to help you as you head into the pro ranks of MMA with the debut in Invicta FC, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But you brought up the next thing I was going to ask you about, which was Gamma. So I saw you got to do that. Talk to me about that, getting to fight in the ring. That's a different thing than you getting to fight in the cage and all that as well. So that's pretty dope that you got to do that with Saudi. I mean, it sucks that you only got to be there 48 hours. It's funny you hear stuff like that because, as you know, our show also covers pro wrestling, and we talked a lot about, when WWE first went over there and there was like the disagreement that happened there. So like they had gotten stuck there on a plane, and we talked about that with a few of the different WWE superstars. So it's crazy when this was it was either a year or 2 years ago that happened.
Okay, so somewhat recent.
And so somewhat recently, at least recently enough, it's still within recent memory. And it's crazy because like they're going over there all the time now. They're having like WrestleMania style like shows over there. And it's just insane to see. They just did the King of the Ring over there, and a guy who I got to chop it up with in the WWE press conference for Survivor Series Gunther won the whole damn thing. But yeah, it's crazy how when you go other places, I guess when you're used to being from America, how it's like you go there and the rules can just be so drastically different. Even though everything seems the same, it's way different.
Yeah, we like, and I mean, obviously over in the Middle East, like we didn't like really know the rules and stuff, but they treat their athletes so well. Their athletes are like amazing to them. And it was the same thing in Thailand for the World Combat Games. I mean, like our friend who's from there, he was like, yeah, just walk around with your gloves, and like they love the fighters. They'll just like give you whatever. And it's like, that is so cool. So yeah.
Just wear your gloves around your neck, get some free shit. I like it.
Yeah.
Hey, I am not mad at you. Do your thing. Get your money. I don't care what it is. Money, food, whatever it is, man, that's dope. Thailand's somewhere I wanted to go. Ironically, that was where my mom was supposed to be at, like literally the week after this whole heart attack thing happened. So I was like, well, thank God she didn't go to Thailand. But talk to me about fighting for Gamma, though. Like I said, we talked a little bit about the ring difference. Talk to me about like the format of the fights over there and like what was the experience like there?
So Gamma was a tournament. It was like a world championship tournament. So there were all countries from all over: Australia, Greece, Italy, France, like Azerbaijan, anything you can think of. I mean, there was a lot of countries there, and we fought in what was called a rage. So it was like a ring combined with a cage, and so it kind of worked out like a regular cage, and yeah, so it was tournament style. So I competed for 3 days, and I had 2 days, 3 fights over 2 days. So the first day I fought 2 fights, and then the third day I just had my finals match, and it was regular MMA, amateur rules, pretty much, no elbows. Just because it was such a long tournament, they want you to like stay healthy or whatever, and yeah, so 3 rounds. 3 minute rounds. So it was a full fights.
That's funny, and it's funny how you see like even I just got to call the fights last weekend for Lights Out Championship. So how you see the difference of like where you can use elbows, where you can't use elbows. That's
hard.
always it.
Yeah,
and it makes sense.
My amateur title fight and then not being able to use elbows, I was like inside control, and I'm like, okay.
Don't drop an elbow. I want to cut you so bad, but I can't cut you right now because the rules say I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about the ring cage. What was that like? So I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so like I said, they call it a rage, which was pretty cool. And now they've switched over to a cage. So Gamma, when I go to Argentina, will be a cage. But there was like a fence at the bottom, but then it was a ring. But it kind of like was nice because like you could bounce them off of it, or it was nice for some people because if you're not a grappler, you could kind of just crawl out of it and then they reset you in the middle. So it wasn't too different. I was nervous about it at first just because I like my wall work, I like my grappling, but it worked out. There wasn't any like cage that they could build up off of and like get up. So yeah, it worked out. It worked out fine. It was kind of nice to be able to see everyone competing because there was three rings, so you could kind of like see better. Yeah, but competition was super high level. I fought 3 pros. It went under my amateur record, but I fought 3 pro fighters. So
talk to me about that. How does that work? I was wondering how that was going to work when you said that you're getting ready to you're going to fight in the one in Argentina. How's that work with it having pros and amateurs?
Yeah, so you can be a pro or an amateur, but it goes under your amateur record. Because we even had pros from our team go to Thailand, and they've already fought pro fights, and their fights ended up under their amateur record. So I'm not really sure how that works, but that's what happened. Like under Tapology, they showed up there. So,
hey man, it would be a good experience. And again, like I was saying with the World Combat Games, I mean, you're getting more experience on a world scale like that. So I mean, hell, I think that's just more experience for the bank. I mean, that's dope to see, but it's just crazy to hear, like, because over here, it's so like once you're a pro, you can't go back and do anything with the
Yeah.
amateurs, like why you see people in boxing fight in like the Golden Gloves and stuff like that for so long, because you can't fight in the Olympics once you turn pro. So it's interesting to see how that's different over there. But with that said, I mean, like I said, all this world traveling you're doing's got to give you some cool experiences, but it's also getting you ready for your pro debut. Talk to me about that. What made now the right time for you to become a pro?
So, before I went to the World Combat Games, I had won my amateur title fight, and I think my coach really wanted me to like defend that belt. But then I got invited to Saudi, and it kind of wasn't exactly, I think, what we were like looking for, because it was pancration. It wasn't MMA. So the rules were ended up being like quite interesting. And
Why do you say that?
so
What was so different than what you expected? Because didn't you tell us when you were on last time that you'd done pancration before?
no. Mm-mm.
Okay, that was right. That was your first time. I remember now. I remember
Yeah.
this conversation now. I couldn't remember if you said it was the first time you were doing, or did you done it once before? What threw you off about the rules?
It was just very point scory.
Okay.
Damage really wasn't taken into account. It was like it was just points, and so I just didn't understand. Like, I did good, I did well, like I got invited to um Thailand, but it was interesting. It was different. So yeah.
Hey man, I like it. Like I said, again, it's different disciplines which you've been able to fight under different rule sets. So I mean, that way, I
I'm very
mean,
thankful for the experience. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I say, the experience and then the different, like I say, the reason I keep bringing up the different rules is like, if you think about it, like obviously Invicta is going to have the same rules like you have with the UFC. But when you think about like Risen's rules are a little bit different than what you see
Mhm.
in the UFC. When you go to bare knuckle, obviously that's different than UFC. So there's all different, like each one of them has their own little flair. Like PFL, you can't elbow in the tournament, like you were talking about, like in Gamma. So all that stuff is going to serve you well too as you become a pro. But now that we've talked about why you became, what made now the right time to become a pro, talk to me about Invicta FC. How did that come to be?
Yeah, so we decided to turn me pro because I mean, I won against 3 professional fighters. I had like quite a dominant showing. I won, I think, split decision, unanimous, and then unanimous. And then we were kind of like, okay, like this is the move, like go home and turn pro. And my coach has had like other girls in the past compete for Invicta and get signed to like the UFC and stuff and do really well for Invicta. So I had like a direct lead in, so that was nice. And of course, like Invicta has so many girls that are signed to bigger leagues, so why not just hop right on if we're ready. So, and we felt as if I was ready, and I work really hard and I keep progressing like really fast, so it's the right move.
I mean, I got to call your last fight for Lights Out Championship as well. I mean, you had a dominant performance in that one, not any holes in the armor to be found. And like I said, with you continuing to keep competing in between that fight and stepping in for your pro debut, I mean, you're going to be in a perfect spot to step inside that cage.
Mhm.
With that said, you brought up another thing I wanted to bring up. Invicta is somewhere, for anybody that's been following MMA for a while, the pedigree of the fighters, like you said, that they've produced out of there, and being a female promotion like that. Talk to me about getting to fight for somewhere like Invicta in that sense. Like, I mean, that's a hell of a place for you to kind of make your stamp. I mean, you go there, you win a title there, like you did for, let's say, Lights Out. And then, I mean, that puts you right center on Front Street. But I mean, you've got, as we've talked about, I think on the last episode you were on, the one thing that's tougher with women's MMA as opposed to the men's side is the women's side is still growing so much that like finding the good quality fights before you get in these big organizations is harder to do. And sometimes even when you get in the big organizations, finding the quality fights like that. So talk to me about fighting for a promotion like Invicta from that sense, being an all female promotion, and you're getting to do it with, a crop of fighters that, like you said, are a group of killers.
Yeah, so I'm very blessed to be able to just jump right in there. The girl I'm going against for my pro debut, she's tough. Um, so my debut is tough. Like I know I'll have tough girls, as it goes on, and I'm ready to jump in there. I'm mentally very driven. I'm mentally really strong. I have a good background in wrestling. Like, I've been here before. I've been through, the challenges of that before, and I feel like that would be the only thing that I need to get through in the game. So I'm really grateful to be able to just debut for Invicta and jump right in there. The caliber of girls is high there. Usually you make your pro debut for somewhere else and then you lead into Invicta, and I am getting to start out with Invicta. So I'm really, really grateful.
Hell yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Now, with that being said, we talked about Invicta. You briefly brought up your opponent. Now, as you go into your pro debut, are you doing a lot of film study? What are your thoughts on her for being your opponent?
Yeah, so I think it's a great matchup. She was an Olympic alternate for Taekwondo. So so she's mentally tough. She's obviously been in her game for a long time, but I think it's a good style matchup, wrestler versus traditional striker. So we're both going to have different strengths and weaknesses to play off of. And I think it'll be a fun one. I've fought a high level jujitsu girl. I fought a high level wrestler. I fought a pretty good sambo girl. Fought another pretty good MMA girl. So it's just gonna be a different look, and yeah, I'm excited about the challenge.
Like I said, I pride myself on being somebody who does my research. I've been seeing some of them tricks you've been pulling out of that bag getting ready for this. Make sure you're following Zoe on IG and all that stuff, because, man, I'm not so sure after what I saw that you're going to be too far behind, even if we get into the striking battle. I seen you pulling out some crazy kicks and shit. Maybe we'll see a missile drop kick in there too, but I've been paying attention. It's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see what happens inside that cage.
I love MMA. Like, I am a wrestler and wrestling's my first love, and it's like my favorite as far as like all the martial arts, if I were to like have to pick one. But I love striking. I think it's fun. I think it's like a puzzle. And I like putting it all together. And so that's what keeps me so interested and keeps me so involved and keeps me like wanting more. Is I know that there's so much room to grow, and I like seeing it all the martial arts come together.
You just made me think, just in that answer, you made me think of another question. A lot of times when you see wrestlers transition to MMA, you'll see them try to grow in the striking area. Obviously, is a lot of times that ends up being like their weakest strength. But you guys growing up on a mat like that and it just being second nature, like you said, as you go into your pro debut, like, how much of a focus was that for you to like try to make sure that you can be well-rounded in all spots? I know in the game in 2024, it can't be like it was back in the day. Because back in the day, you would see people like, even when we'll just use Anderson Silva, for example. When he first came on to UFC, he was seen as like the Muay Thai guy and all that stuff, even though he had jiu-jitsu. Or you'd see the guy, like you said, who was, the standout wrestler like a Matt Hughes or whatever. And even in 2024, you'll see the good wrestlers, and maybe they might learn how to box and all those things. But like I said, that's one of the things that stuck out to me about your game, is the fact that you can see that you're working on all areas, not just, okay, I already know I'm a good wrestler, so let me learn how to box because I'm going to have good power, because then you're throwing decent kicks and everything in the leg. How important of a thing was that for you as you crossed over into MMA, so that you wouldn't be just one-dimensional as a wrestler?
I mean, that's never bothered me. I know a lot of people come into MMA and they're like, I don't want to be one dimensional. And I don't either, because that's not the sport. I would keep wrestling. But I don't mind that I'm a wrestler, and I don't mind that I can take you down and hold you down and beat you on the ground. But it's been important for me, because I'm a shorter fighter, to work on like my head movement and like getting inside and just having good fundamentals. And I think that's what makes me super well rounded. Is I've always, even in wrestling, like I just focus on my fundamentals. So that was what was really important for me, and like my coaches determined, was learning how to do the basic things right away.
So I know we talked about influences and things like that in the last fight, but since you last time you were on the show, we've seen a lot of movement as far as people going different places. And one of the people that jumps out to me when talking to somebody like you is somebody like Kayla Harrison. What are your thoughts on her jumping over from the PFL? What do you think of what we saw from her in the UFC? And what do you think is going to happen in the rest of her run in UFC? Because she looked dominant at her debut at 135.
I think she'll do well. I think that's a hell of a weight cut. That does not sound fun to me.
She looked huge in there. Holy shit.
She looked huge. I like where I'm at with my weight. I really do well with maintaining it, so props to her. Like that's a lot. I think the jump over from the PFL, I saw her do an interview where she was talking about she's like making less money, but there's more opportunities. So like good for her and whatever works for her, Like I have dreams of being in the UFC, but if I were signed to PFL or whatever, like I would be happy. Like I would think. I'm not there yet. But I think she'll do well, especially at 135. I just do. I think 135 bantamweight is still growing for women. So I think she'll be dominant there.
Well,
Especially
I mean, to your point, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh,
I was
you're
going to say to your point. Really, if you think about PFL, think about it. She won the $1 million tournament, what, 2 or 3 times? So, I mean, she got the bag a few times, more than most women are seeing it in a whole career. So at this point, I mean, if you're getting the opportunity to go over to the UFC and now you've got your chance to work your way up to a UFC title and be on that bigger stage, I mean, I agree with you and agree with what she said in saying that maybe that there's more opportunity over there. And I mean, let's face it. I mean, I think it's great that PFL is doing what they're doing. I think that it's great that there's like another viable option for fighters. But I mean, realistically, when people grow up watching fighting, what is it they're watching? I mean, no offense, it wasn't the PFL. I grew up watching the UFC. The same as like the same as
more people see it more. I mean, people call MMA. They're like, you do UFC, and I'm like, well, MMA, but yeah.
Oh yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. It's the same thing with wrestling. Like even though now wrestling is arguably as hot now as it was when I was a kid during the Attitude Era, but like the thing is now that WWE is doing what they're doing. I mean, they're doing record numbers. I was there at WrestleMania in Philly, and I think they said the final number for between the two nights was like 161,000. So when you think about the UFC was saying that the numbers for the Conor McGregor fight, which I got to get your opinions on everything we've been hearing about that shit. But, with the Conor McGregor fight in the gate, they were talking about with that, they were saying like the lowest ticket to get in there was like $1,000. So, I mean, at a certain point, you got to go where the money's at. And ultimately the UFC is like, been the big dog for so long, the same as WWE has in wrestling. Like when people think of wrestling, you see them that say WWE all the time. So I mean, at a certain point, it is what it is. But now I like what I like about PFL being there, although, and I'll ask you this because I'd love to hear your opinion, because I like that PFL has opened another opportunity to where, like you said, fighters have another avenue to go. My question to you now is, with their acquisition of Bellator, do you think they just really re-become Bellator because Bellator has really been number 2 for so long?
The PFL's become Bellator?
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, they inherited a bunch of those contracts. They're getting to pick, which ones they want, which ones they don't want, as obviously they just let go of a guy like Gegard Mousasi, but yet you've got guys like Diego Lima that are re-signing with them, or no, it was his brother, excuse me. But my point is, with Bellator going over there, do you think that the Bellator fighters kind of overtake what we see in the PFL? Because when they did that champions card, I think only one of the PFL champions won, and it was the heavyweight guy.
Sure, probably. I mean, realistically, yeah. Yeah. I don't have much to say.
I got
yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, but that leads to the other person I wanted to ask you about. We got to talk with her before her debut for PFL, and we covered her fight with us being from here in Detroit. What are your thoughts on Claressa Shields being in MMA and doing boxing at the same time, like how you were talking about with doing pancreation and all that stuff? I mean, the switch back and forth between boxing and MMA has got to be a hell of a jump, because they just announced that she's going to be fighting boxing again and moving up a weight class here in Detroit next month.
So I don't plan on ever doing pancration again, but I do wrestle and do MMA. So as far as boxing and MMA, yeah, like good for her. If she can do good in both, like more power to her, you know. There's just more money in boxing, I feel like. So yeah, if she can stick with boxing and make money and then like switch over to MMA and kind of get a bigger name, because you're gonna probably get a bigger name in MMA. She's just gonna make more money and get more things done. So I think she's awesome. I love Claressa.
I mean, look, the one thing you can't say, love Claressa, hate Claressa, whatever. To watch somebody like build themselves up from that and then like to get to the level she did in boxing and say, well, I know I could just keep beating chicks up over here in boxing and make me some money, but I want to go try MMA to see, to see how I can do in that. Now, has she had her struggles in MMA? Sure. But I mean, that again, that's a totally different fighting style. That's different than how she grew up in. And then to go in there and get 2 wins. I mean, she looked decent in her last fight. She's still got things to work on, but I mean, look, the same as it's dope for us to have you back on talking about this Invicta fight. We rock with anybody that's coming from Michigan, and we've gotten to cover a few things, for her here, whether it be a couple of her toy drives and the last fight. So, I mean, I think it's dope that she's getting to do that. And then to bring the boxing fights back here to Detroit, it's cool to see, some world championship fights here. We got to talk the UFC into coming back here.
Yes. I went and watched it when it was at Little Caesars Arena.
Me too. We were there. Shout out to past guest of the show, Sam Alvey. I remember linking up with him at Harry's after the fact, but man, that seems so long ago. 2018 seems like a lifetime ago already.
I was still in high school.
Man, that was a long time ago. And then it's funny the timing, because now you got, Dustin Poirier just had the fight with Islam Makhachev, but the main event of that card was Max Holloway, who might have just had his career performance against Justin Gaethje in that one. You got any thoughts on where you'd like to see Holloway fight next, or who it might be?
I saw something that he was fighting Poirier.
So that's the name they keep throwing around. I've heard that one around. I heard Volk said he'd like to fight Dustin Poirier, but it'll be interesting to see what Max does, because I feel like even watching that last fight, I think Max's body filled out a lot better for that last fight. I feel like he looked a lot better at 55 this time than he did in prior fights. But honestly, if I'm thinking about it, like, I think that Topuria fight may be the fight to make, only because even though Topuria is a killer and there's no way to, like, what he did to Volk and to do it that smooth, like, you can't say that the guy's not a killer. But my thing that makes that fight so interesting is Topuria right now likes to come in and just like butcher guys. I don't see him doing that to Max Holloway like that, because we know Max Holloway can take a shit ton of damage. Right. So I feel like at the very least, even if Topuria does have, like a good game plan, he's able to get some of his stuff off on Max, I feel like there's no way he can go into that fight and like be unscathed. You have to walk
into a fight with Max and know that it's going to go the distance, probably.
And know you're going to take some damage. Like, you don't walk out of a fight with him unscathed. Like, even if you batter him, like, there's very few fights I've ever seen Max in where he didn't at least mark up his opponent, like, to some degree. And I mean, like I said, I am anyone that follows this show, I've talked about it for years. Like, I'm a big believer in momentum. Like, sometimes I believe if you're a guy or a girl who's on like a few fight win streak and really just whatever it is, all knockouts, impressive performances, whatever it is, anybody can get clipped on any given night. But if you have momentum and you're feeling yourself when you go into the cage, I mean, you really can, you can really catch somebody who on any other circumstance could probably beat you.
It's a great sport. That's why it's the greatest sport.
I could not agree with that anymore. Speaking of the female ilk, we also just saw the debut of the new season of Tough. Who do you got between Alexa Grasso and Valentina running it back? And what do you think of the last fight?
Honestly, I haven't really been keeping up with it. I'm just gonna be honest. So,
Well, they just had episode number 1, but I'm interested to see in that fight only because I never thought that I would see
that like number 3.
Yeah, them fighting, not tough. I just mean, what are your thoughts on them two fighting again after the last one?
I think Grasso won. I do think Grasso won the last one. I would like to see her win again. But, they were both, like, close even until I know she subbed her the first one, but, like, it wasn't like a domination.
It was close enough. Yeah, not at all.
It kind of just depends what they bring, if Valentina needs to change up the game plan, clearly.
I would hope that somebody as high caliber of her knows that. I would think that I just hope it's not one of those things where she's kind of like stuck in her ways as she fights, because you got to think about it in this sense too. Like when you got somebody like Valentina that was as dominant as she was for so long, because think about how long she was champ where like just nobody even got close to touching her for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be honest, before Alexa Grasso was able to beat her, nobody thought that she was going to beat her either, because she was coming up because she wouldn't have been in the title fight, but still in relativity to Valentina, she was a nobody at the time.
Yeah.
And then for her to go in, and that was really her coming out party as far as, on the main stage like that. So I don't know, man. Like I said, Alexa is tough, but I also think that there's something to be said for, I think that the other thing that makes that fight so interesting is not that I think if Valentina loses that like her career's over by any sense, but the fact that she's got to win this fight so that she can kind of get that that status back. I feel like that puts this fight at like a crossroads to where like I feel like you're going to see one of two things from Valentina. Either she's going to be like, a whole nother killer and comes in there and just comes out with something different.
It's hard to beat someone 3 times. Like,
see, and that's why I'm saying, because like,
and it's hard. Number 3 is, it's hard. It's hard mentally because you are also like, man, like I just had 2 wars with this person. Like,
can I beat them again?
And they want to fight me again. So number 3 is hard. Yeah.
I think that's going to be interesting. But then again, like I said, on the other hand, with the momentum part of it. So either way, at least this is a tough season where like, at least when we get to the end of it with the fight, like I really want to see these two fight. I feel like the fight will deliver regardless of who wins out. But okay, that brings up the other part that I had to bring up. Anybody who's been following us or you guys who are new here, make sure you check out our chat with one half of what is supposed to be the UFC 303 main event. Michael Chandler, we talked to him for Hiatus Tequila and the new brand that he's associated with. And we talked a little bit about him getting this matchup with Conor McGregor. But I don't know if you followed any of the news with that, but I mean, we went from, okay, here's the first press conference. Now we got a date. It's going to be International Fight Week, all this stuff. And now abruptly, and in Ireland of all places, they're canceling. First it was postponed, then they canceled the press conference, and now it's coming out that Conor is injured in some degree. So what do you make of all this? I've never known Conor to be somebody to back out, but it's crazy.
I'm like, this is not going to happen. This is just not going. Why? Conor doesn't need to fight. Conor doesn't need to fight. I think it's like everyone knows, even if they don't care about MMA, who Conor McGregor is. So it being talked about probably helps the UFC, helps it out a little bit. But I just kind of had a suspicion from the beginning. I'm like, this is just no. Like, no one cares to see him fight, I feel like, who are really fans. I mean,
I don't know, though. They broke the UFC gate for the tickets they sold. That's the insane part. So the guy still sells tickets. They said the lowest selling ticket that you could buy to get into the T-Mobile Arena, the last I read the article, said it was $1,014. And that's for the fucking nosebleeds. So, I mean, at some point, people want to see this dude fight. I mean, he's got like the pro wrestling ability of him where people either want to see him kick somebody's ass or they want to see him get his ass kicked.
I like Conor. I do. And which is funny because I'm not like into fighters like that are just, talk.
I'm usually not either, but he's entertaining, dude.
I think he's funny. I think it's funny. I think it's just him, like it couldn't not be him. Like same with like Sean Strickland and stuff. Like it's just who they are. So yeah.
And I mean, at least with Conor though, right? Like, and I'm not saying that Strickland didn't do the same thing, but when you really think about it, Conor is like this little poor kid from Ireland that fought up from not having shit when he was in Cage Warriors. And if you think that I'm lying, go and do your research. It's widely been documented at this point.
A lot in our gym.
Right. Yeah. It's been widely documented at this point. Yes, you might see all this money, you see all this fame, you see him out here looking like Ric Flair and all that shit. But, dude, he did not start that way. Dude fought himself up from nothing, was one of the first double champs, whether he defended the title at 155 or not. You still can't argue the fact that he's been the biggest star of at least the last 15 years for the UFC, easily. Like, I mean, the pay-per-views and things that he sold, and like you said, just the talk of that fight has garnered more hype than... Shit, I would argue it garnered more hype than the UFC 300 card, and holy shit, they stacked that one from top to bottom, from the prelims to the whole main card. I mean, a fight fan.
It was a great birthday present.
I'm not mad at it. That sounds like a dope ass birthday. I was calling fights, and then we were watching the fights after the fight because I believe that was the night of the lights out fights. We were watching that with Michigan. Hell yeah. We went and watched him with Michigan's own Esteban Rodriguez, which I heard will be making his way back to the BKFC soon. So stay tuned with that. But yeah, man, speaking of Corey and any walk, sorry, couldn't make a great show. Can't wait to see you scrap. Like I said, man, I feel bad for Michael Chandler in this, right? Because think about this. This dude's waited around for 2 years, hasn't fought nobody else. Granted, I don't think that Chandler's necessarily hurting for money either, but like still, you waited around for 2 years to fight one guy, and then you finally think you're going to get this chance at this big fight that's unarguably the biggest fight of his career. And then that was the other part that was so telling for me. So far, I'm trying to hold on to the hope that, maybe that this fight's still going to happen. But the other thing that definitely makes me think that this fight's not happening is the fact that I don't know if you saw the post from Michael Chandler, but Michael Chandler already put out a post saying, if you need me, you can find me in Tennessee. Which, anyone who knows, he trains at Kill Cliff with our guy Mitch McKee and Gilbert Burns and all the killers out there. And if he's already going back to Nashville, I feel like he knows something that we don't. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't wish any ill will on it. I hope Conor gets to come back, make his big return, at least get to have one last hurrah, because I've also said this, with him signing that deal so that he's part of BKFC, I think at this point Conor wants to at least get one more fight in because he's only got one more fight on his UFC deal. And I still stick by what I said. With him having a hand in the BKFC, I feel like he's going to try to step in there at least once. I don't know how that's going to happen, when, where, who, a fight against him and Mike Perry might sell pay-per-views like they were talking about with this. And I mean, if David Feldman's paying the kind of money that they say that Mike Perry got paid out to fight Thiago Alves the other week, I'm sure that you could talk Conor into that. But I don't know, man. I'm with you. I think the thing that makes this fight so hard to happen is, like you said, it's a lot different when you're coming up from the slums, right? And you're fighting so you can put food on your table. But when you've made millions of dollars over and then made millions of dollars over top of that because of your business ventures outside of that, it can't be the same hunger. Now, I believe fully that, you want to fight. I believe that you want to go out on your own terms. I believe that you want to leave a better taste in people's mouth than what we saw with you breaking your leg and all that stuff. So I'm not saying that he doesn't want to fight by any means, because I truly believe he wants to go out on his own terms. But at the same time, man, like you said, it's just got to be hard, right? Yeah. To have that same hunger to get up and train. I've never fought on a level like him, but I know.
I don't know. I think I just love fighting to fight. Yeah. So
See,
I
and that's
don't.
why I say I can see him wanting to fight, but I
Yeah.
just wonder if he puts the same, like, especially depending on what this injury is, right? Like,
Mhm.
depending on how serious this injury is, especially with him coming off of that leg, it really makes you wonder how hard is he really going to go into like a rehab if it's something that's serious enough that
Mhm.
like the fight does have to be postponed. Does he really want to go through like all the shit that you got to go through for like a PT thing to see him come back? I hope like hell it does. And shout out to everybody who's coming in that says we're at 105 people watching right now. Make sure you guys like it, share it, retweet it, let your mom know, whatever the hell you're gonna do with it. But I don't know, man. I hope we see this fight just for the spectacle of it. I feel like anytime we can have spectacle fights like that in MMA, I just think it's good for the sport. I mean, look
I agree.
what we just saw with Tyson Fury versus Usyk, right? And
Mhm.
then what that was over there, and then you had in the same night, and then you had Triple G and Kambosos, and then you got all these different fights that are popping off in boxing. I feel like the more big fights. I mean, I know we're getting UFC fights almost every weekend, but when we can get these big blockbuster fights, I just think it's better for MMA as a whole. I think it helps
Mhm.
everybody, whether it's UFC, PFL. The more eyes that are on MMA or boxing or whatever fight sport you're talking, I feel like the better it is for everybody. So I hope just for the sport's sake that we see that. But before we get to things for the sport's sake, do you think we saw the end of Dustin Poirier? Because that was a hell of a fight against Islam, but I know they were talking retirement possibly before it. But do you think that they could get him back in there for one more fight if it were
I think
against the
so.
right opponent?
I think so. Islam's a tough opponent to beat. So I think that it was a good performance on his part, good wrestling. Like, and you just can't out wrestle Islam. So I think he'll come back. Like, I just from the interviews I saw afterwards and the way he was reacting, yeah, but who knows? I think it'll be a longer layoff potentially, but yeah.
If he were to come back, who would you like to see him fight? Like, what do you think would be a fun fight to see? Maybe like I was thinking maybe him and Gaethje.
I think that would be a fun fight, yeah. But I feel like
Especially since Gaethje's coming off the loss to Holloway too. Like I
right.
feel like he's not going to want to go out that way, and if Dustin comes back, he doesn't want to go out on a loss like that either. And I mean, we all know that Dustin Poirier loves a dogfight. So who better
Yeah,
to get into a dogfight with than Justin Gaethje?
right, right. I just feel like the grappling, I don't know. I don't know. Dustin's grappling might.
But
I
you
don't
really
know.
think those two guys that grapple?
He might. Yeah, I think Dustin might if he gets his head out of his ass. He should. So
I feel like with that, if that ends up, I mean, if he does one more fight, I would definitely say that the next one's going to be the last one, unless he has like this miraculous change of heart and says he wants to go for another title run, which I think that was his
I
last
think
one.
Dustin
So,
wins that fight, honestly.
I mean, I couldn't say that you're wrong, but I think either way, anybody who's watching in the comments or on Twitter, let us know what you think. I feel like Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje would be like, shit, that would be like the ultimate fight for both of them to ride out into the sunset with. Like, that's like a WWE type fight, loser leave town fight.
Yeah.
This one. Because I feel like both those guys have really done everything they're going to do, outside of winning like the overall undisputed title, which I think both of them to get another chance at getting a title run, I think would be really tough in Gaethje's case after losing to that fight to Max Holloway. And obviously Poirier just got another shot at Islam.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like that, dude, if we're writing stories, that's like the perfect way for both of them guys to get another fight. I like it. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, last question I got for you. So J-Bone is not with us tonight because he's at Hootie and the Blowfish, still singing to some Darius Rucker and all that good
there.
stuff.
I'm gonna be there tomorrow at Soaring Eagle.
I'm kind of jealous, man, because I've seen Darius Rucker a few times. What's your favorite Darius Rucker song, or is it a Hootie song?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I can't say
He puts on the most chill concerts though. It's such a good vibe at those concerts.
It was really good. I saw him
Yeah.
at not Soaring Eagle, Pine Knob.
Pine Knob is the best, man. I'm
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to getting out to Pine Knob. There's definitely a few of them I got to hit. I told my mom once she got out of the hospital, once she got out, I would take her to go see Creed. So I'm looking forward to seeing Creed at Pine Knob. That's going to be pretty badass. And our homies and past guests of the show, shout out to the homie Chris Kale, who just turned 50, but Five Finger Death Punch is coming back through Pine Knob. So I definitely have to make a ride down to Pine Knob for that one. What'd you say? I didn't hear that one.
That was a good concert too. I saw them years ago.
Fuck yeah. I'll definitely have to tell Chris you're a fan. Like I said, they were that was so I've gotten to see them a bunch of times, but I just saw them when they were here with Metallica, that big Metallica show that was down there. It was like Metallica and Pantera night 1, and then it was like Metallica and fucking Five Finger Death Punch on the same bill as well. No, I take that back. Pantera might have been night 2 as well. It was nuts, man. That was one of the wildest concerts I've ever seen. To have Metallica on both nights and get a different set on both nights, and then they had like this big giant circle stage that went around like the whole Ford Field, and then they dropped like these giant ass like beach balls from the ceiling and shit. That was insane. But Five Finger, when they were at DT, is definitely going to always hold a safe space in the heart because Chris hooked it up, dude. I probably ain't never had that good of tickets at DT ever in my life because I'm usually a chill on the hill guy. Like I like to be out in the people. I don't know what it is. I just like being outside in Michigan, during the summer. But that was dope. Got to do that, and then this still got it sitting over there in the wall in the studio. You can see the pass, and he gave us the jersey the Tigers gave him. So yeah, that was definitely always a cool one. Make sure you guys go check out that episode. Well, like I mentioned, do you got any of them on the docket? Is there anything you're looking to see or anything like? I know you said you like Pine Knob, but is there any thing you're looking forward to this summer?
Just in general?
Any like concerts or anything like that, or games or anything you want to hit like once you get out of the fight?
Yeah, so I'm going to see Shinedown tomorrow. So
fuck yeah, dude. I love Shinedown. Shinedown is like one of the best concerts ever. Favorite Shinedown song?
I grew up with Shinedown. God, I don't even know. I don't know. It's hard to pick a favorite Shinedown song.
See? Thanks for checking us out. Yeah, like I said,
I like Unity. That was my favorite when I was like really young. Yeah, I don't know. I don't listen to them as much anymore, just because they were like, I swear, a band that I listened to when I was like in the 8th grade. So it's just kind of like a song comes on, and I'm like, oh, holy crap! Like this used to be my favorite.
See, but the thing is, when you go to their shows, you realize how many bangers they had, though.
So many.
You could literally will go there and
more often. Yeah.
Yeah, they had bangers, dude. Like they literally got like a roster of songs. Like we were talking about that, me and J-Bone, where we was like, son of a bitch, why do they gotta be like so far at fucking Soaring Eagle? I think the last time I was at Soaring Eagle was actually for a Bellator fight. Back in the day was the last time I was at Soaring Eagle. But yeah, I agree. I would say top 3 songs off the top of my head for Shinedown. Not my top 3, but I'll give it an honorable mention. That Part of Being Human that they got out right now is pretty cool. I like that one. But as far as favorites, even though it's not technically their song, their version of Simple Man is badass. And the fact that they always go up on like the big platforms when they're at DTE and all that stuff too, like that makes it dope too, like out on the hill. Fly from the Inside is always a badass one. Reminds me of that movie Grind that was back in the day, for anybody that remembers that one. And I'll go one that's kind of outside. I like Bully as well, man. They got a lot of good songs, but those are.
I feel so wrong saying that, but that's one that comes on, and I'm like, this is good. This is really
that
good.
Song's a bad song. It's talking about how you don't need to be a bully. We all need to have a little more love in the world. I mean, you're not going to be giving out some love until after the fight on June 28th. But I've enjoyed getting to chop it up with you. Appreciate all of you guys coming on here and checking us out. Make sure you like it, retweet it, share all that stuff. We're up to 132 of y'all watching right now, so we appreciate you. But with that being said, do you got any last words for your opponent? Let them know where they can check out the fight and where they can keep up with what you got going
Yeah, so you can keep up with me and everything I have going on my Instagram. It's at eat.sleep.wrestle or just Zoe Nowicki, or on my Facebook, Zoe Nowicki or Zoe Nowicki MMA. I am super active on social media. You know, I'm really growing my brand. I have a great videographer now, Tristan Canada, who's doing all
That
my
shit
work.
is fire.
So thank you. It is. He does a really good job.
He's a
So
fighter as well too, ain't he?
he is. He's a boxer. Well, he does MMA, but he is mostly a boxer. He's my striking coach as well. So we do a lot together. We're always grinding in the gym together. It's fun. But yeah, follow me on social media. I I post a lot on there. So
She posts lots of dope stuff. That's right. Make sure you're checking out Zoe Nowicki on all the platforms. Make sure you're checking out Invicta FC June 28th. Make sure you check
a
that
week
out.
later, I will be competing in Argentina for the Pan Ams. So
Fuck,
have a
you
lot
just don't
going on.
sleep, do you, son of a bitch?
No. Yeah.
Trying to get them punches on the passport. I like it. I
Mhm.
like it. Staying busy out here. Well, make sure you check out Knockouts and 3 Counts. I heard our guy Dale Patricks is back from Japan. Make sure you stay tuned. We got some stuff for you next week. Shout out the Lights Out Championship. And one more time for the Michigan MMA scene, shout out to Big John, who just passed away this week. I was glad to work their last fight up in Sault Ste. Marie. Until next time, and in the in-between time, hit that subscribe button. Check out our sponsors, Potter's Tree Service. Peace.